How do I know that my baby's getting enough breast milk? What is that APGAR score? Newborns bring on a level of anxiety they can't communicate.
The well-being of the mother and the parents is really important for the well-being of the baby.
What should I know? What should I not know?
Not to worry, because the colostrum that's being produced is.
When do you want us to call you?
Studies have shown that time and time again.
I think you just relieved a whole lot of fears.
Most parents agree, having a newborn can be very unnerving. Sometimes you're wondering, do I know enough information? Well, don't you worry. On today's episode, we have an expert with us who's a pediatrician in community medicine to share with you some of the do's, don'ts, what you should know, what you don't need to know. Don't stress yourself out. Just listen to this episode. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to click subscribe.
So you guys, the pediatrician of all pediatricians, okay? Everybody's favorite pediatrician, Dr. Calderon, is back on the couch with us today to answer some of your questions and relieve you from some of those trepidations, okay? Dr. Calderon, thank you for joining us again on the virtual couch.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Listen, I have a list of questions on behalf of my patients and myself that we want to know.
Perfect.
Let's start with the one that I get asked all the time. You know, it's really hard when you're breastfeeding to know how much the baby is getting. And I get this question all the time. How do I know that my baby's getting enough breast milk?
That is a great question, especially for first-time breastfeeding parents. It's pretty hard, right? Because you can't really measure and see how many ounces are in a bottle to guess. But I tell parents to monitor their output. So typically on the first day of life, you're looking for at least one wet diaper a day. On the second day, 2, 3 on the third, 4 on the fourth, and 5 or more after day 5. So as long as they're meeting that minimum, then you can be rest assured that they're getting enough. Now, for breastfeeding moms, the first, I would say most moms will get their breast milk supply in between 3 to 5 days, but not to worry, because the colostrum that's being produced is really high in nutrition and will help keep the baby well.
Oh, so it's not just high in antibodies, which is oftentimes what we talk about, but it's like a superfood, essentially.
Exactly. That's what I tell parents that I see as well.
Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. And a lot of people tend to forget, just, you know, we feed kids with the idea that they have the stomachs that we have, and their stomachs are like yay big.
Exactly.
Yep. Right. A cherry big at birth. So that's really helpful, looking at output. My end too, for moms who are pumping, I sometimes tell them, if you're pumping and you're getting a good amount of milk out when you pump, you probably are getting enough milk for your baby. Now, one of the things that oftentimes kind of confuses us or makes us a little anxious, because it feels like a test, you go in for that first pediatrician visit and the baby lost a little bit of weight. Listen, that feels personal to a lot of people. Okay. What should we think about that initial weight loss that happens after birth?
I reassure all parents that it's normal and expected. So I tell all parents that babies will lose weight the first week of life and then regain it by the time they're 2 weeks old. And the reason we have them come in so soon after is to make sure that the rate of weight loss is not too drastic and that everything else is going well, right? So looking for things like jaundice, which can also be a sign of dehydration, and how active they are, if they're showing their normal newborn reflexes, are all things that we look for too. A lot of parents, I think weight and weight loss brings a lot of anxiety across the board, both for formula-fed babies and breastfed babies. And so I try to reassure them that I expect weight loss. I am surprised when I see a newborn the first week of life and they've gained weight.
Oh, okay. And so that's good to know. So a certain amount of weight loss is normal. Do we know why that happens, or why they lose that initial weight?
I don't think there's one definitive answer, but I think the stress itself of birth, right after being in the amniotic fluid, and the stress of delivery. There haven't been any studies that I came across that shows women that receive IV fluids prior to birth, if that changes significantly. But anecdotally, we have seen that moms that receive IV fluids for a few days before, those babies tend to have a little bit more drastic weight loss after, because some of that fluid is believed to be absorbed by the baby as well. And
that's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And then, at the time of birth, babies receive something that's called the APGAR score. And a lot of moms always ask, like, what is that APGAR score? Can you help us understand what's the point of that score?
It's a sign of how well the baby's transitioning after birth. And so there are these reflexes that we look at, and also how they're breathing and how they react and their color. One of them looks at, how well perfused they are. And if they look more blue cyanotic, then more pink and diffuse. I would say most babies are around the 8 and 9 for a healthy term baby. There have been some 10s, but those are not as common.
Yeah, we're real hard to give out them 10s.
Yes. Yes.
It's really interesting to really see how parents kind of transition to having a newborn at home, especially for new moms. I think one of the difficulties and challenges of having a newborn is the inability to communicate. For the first time, you have this individual that you're responsible for, and even though have some insight on your child because you've been carrying your child for months upon months, and you have some insight on your child's behavior, it's still really hard to know if your child's okay. What are some of the initial things that parents should at least be familiar with, or what should be alarming that is common, so that we know it's time to give you a call? Like, when do you want us to call you?
Oh, that's a great question. So signs, I think, to help a baby do well is to learn their hunger cues. The baby's rooting and showing the rooting reflex and turning their mouth and their lips towards the nipple or a bottle, and also bringing their hands to their mouth or licking their lips, sticking their tongue out, showing that they're hungry. And so making sure a baby, especially the first 2 weeks of life, that they're feeding every 2 to 3 hours, especially if they're breastfed. And if they're formula fed, they can go about every 3 hours. And also looking at their signs of wanting to sleep, right? Babies will sleep a lot the first few weeks after they're born. And so looking at the signs to make sure that you're, not stimulating them too much, letting them time to rest and sleep as well. Now, for time to call the pediatrician is if the baby is not responsive to you, you're having a hard time getting them to wake up. So say you're feeding a baby every 3 hours and it's been 3 to 4 hours and the baby will not wake up, that's time to contact your pediatrician. Or if it looks like the baby is becoming very yellow after the first few days of life, would be a reason to contact your pediatrician. Definitely fevers, anything of 100.4 or higher is not normal or expected in a newborn, and that would merit an evaluation by a doctor at that point. And then any difficulty breathing. So if the baby is looking blue throughout the body persistently, having difficulty breathing, time to check.
I am so glad you brought up the point about the sleep and what's considered to be normal sleep pattern, because sometimes you do get some moms who are like, wow, my baby slept all night. My baby is a good baby. And it sounds like you're saying that a baby should not be sleeping all night. So baby should be waking up about how often?
About every 3 hours when they're infants.
Interesting. So some moms may get a little frustrated because, especially breastfeeding moms, because sometimes I realize some babies do what we call cluster feeding, where they'll feed back to back, back to back, back to back. Is cluster feeding normal if your baby constantly is going back to the breast? Should we be alarmed?
No, I think that's a good thing. And it'll happen during the certain growth spurts of the baby in the newborn period. And so I also warn moms to expect that it's normal. It's their way of telling your body to make more milk, and also the signal that they need more milk as they grow. And so it tends to happen usually the first few days of life, and then at 1 week, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then it kind of tends to settle because the milk supply is starting to get established. And once the milk is established, then you don't see the cluster feedings as much.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm taking notes. Okay. So recently, not recently, I would say in the last few years, with all of the attention to maternal mortality concerns, there has been an increase in women who are looking at home birth as an alternative setting for bringing their child into this world. I should say parents, because oftentimes it's a couple's decision. What can you share about what patients should do after they have a home birth? How soon should you be seeing them in the office?
I'm not too familiar with the providers that do attend home births. I would hope that they would have some knowledge of the newborn period so that they can assess the baby after they're born. And if
oftentimes there is not a pediatrician. Oftentimes it's the midwife, maybe a doula. And so sometimes you get the question like, should I go in this week? What should I do?
Right. But from my understanding, doulas or the midwife will have some knowledge of the newborn period, correct?
Oh, that's what you're saying. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let me shut up.
So I would just make sure they know a little bit about that, right, to ensure that the safety of the baby as soon as they're born. And then I would recommend, at least within the 24, 48 hours, to get seen by a pediatrician if everything else is well.
Oh, okay. And so what are you looking at that newborn visit? Like what are some of the milestones that you're looking at that particular visit?
At the newborn visit, it's a check to make sure that jaundice is not a concern. So typically we will see, we have little skin monitors that will check the skin. It's a non-invasive test. We'll see how feeding is going and if a family is breastfeeding to ensure the parents have the adequate resources to help establish that bond and that they feel comfortable breastfeeding. And a lot of times parents also have a lot of questions about formula, how much, how to make it, how to store it, how to prepare it. So making sure we are all on the same page of how to safely feed the baby and making sure that the baby is not having any other concerns at that first visit. And weight loss too is another thing we check.
Who comes over to the house? Because a lot of times newborn is here and everybody wants to come by and visit the newborn.
Yes.
Help us understand the concerns, or are there concerns about the exposure to newborns to too many people?
Yes, I think that's a very tough question to answer, but I try to tell parents to think of the health and well-being of both the baby and the parents. And so, yes, I know, especially for the first grandbaby, people are really excited. Everyone wants to meet the baby, but I also want to remind parents that it's a very challenging time. You're sleep deprived, you're going to be up, you're going to be tired, and you're learning yourself as a new parent and learning the baby. And so the more people that come over, it takes away from that initial bond for you to have with the baby, especially if you're breastfeeding. And I also think it's important to remember that a baby sleeps a lot the first, few weeks of their life. And so a lot of stimulation will also affect the quality of their sleep. So I mentioned those two things, right? Because it's a lot of time to recover, rest, establish breastfeeding, and establish the bond between the parents and the new family unit, right? Which is going to be very different. And then there's also always the concern of infection risk, right? So definitely if anyone is sick, I do not recommend that they come visit, even if they just have a sniffles, even if they swear it's allergies. If anyone is having any symptom, I do not recommend they come over because of the risk to the baby. Now, I met a lactation nurse who shared something that I thought was very, very witty and very clever. And she said, the first month of a baby's life, you shouldn't have any visitors. Only have visitors that come to help you. And that is to help you breastfeed, help you cook, help you clean, because your job as a new parent is to take care of yourself and the baby. And I really love that.
Listen. Yeah. Okay, we just had a doula on our program that shared exactly the same thing that we posted last week. Yeah. So now you have a pediatrician co-signing also. Yeah. Get them rowdy people out your house. Yeah. Only you should be coming to serve. Oh my gosh, I can't co-sign that anymore. I absolutely agree that the focus should be serving, not being entertained, not being cuddled with the newborn, but serving the mom and the newborn so that they have a healthy transition. I so love that we're emphasizing that. The other thing I love that we're emphasizing is the maternal mental health and really how much of an impact it has on the development of the baby and the bond of the baby.
Yes.
So share with us about what pediatricians are doing when it comes to maternal mental health.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I am a firm believer that the well-being of the mother and the parents is really important for the well-being of the baby. Studies have shown that time and time again. At our visits, there are different types of screening tools, and we use the Edinburgh scale at our newborn visit, at the 2-week visit, and at the 1-month visit, and I believe at the 2-month visit, just to check in to see how mom is doing and how the other people in the house are doing, because it's a very stressful, a big transition, and a lot of unknowns. And I feel mothers are also learning their new identity and their new role as a new mother. So it's a lot to handle.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that you're a new mom yourself also. Well, not that new, you're kind of deep into motherhood.
Approaching the 1 year.
Yes, you're deep into motherhood now. When would you advise for patients who are preparing for childbirth? When should we start looking for a pediatrician?
I think in the 3rd trimester would be a good time to start thinking about it. And check in. A lot of families have, a family pediatrician or someone that they've been recommended to. And I would just check in with them to make sure that, once the baby is born, what's the timeline? When can I call to schedule the appointment? Can I get soon enough appointment? Because, if you call any doctor's office, they'll tell you the wait time is like 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. But most pediatricians save slots for newborns because we know those will come at any time.
Oh, that's good to know. So most people don't have to worry about a newborn visit because you guys have slots open for them. That's really, really good to know, because I know that's a question that comes up all the time, is how do I get in to see a pediatrician? So I think you just relieved a whole lot of fears. The choosing of a pediatrician outside of recommendations, because this is a long-term relationship, is really the goal, mm-hmm. right? What things should I look for to see whether or not this particular doctor is a match for me, is a match for my family? What are some of the key things to look at, especially for patients that feel some hesitancy with going into the institutions because they're anti-vaxxers, for example, and don't want to be judged or feel a certain way about their choices?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but I think it's actually meeting the doctor yourself. And I can't stress that enough, because if you're not getting word of mouth, it's really hard to tell via a website or, the company's, mission statement. It's a little hard to tell because every doctor is a little bit different and unique and individual, even if they work for a bigger corporation or a bigger clinic and they're not necessarily private practice. And so, unfortunately, I think you'll have to schedule an appointment and see how you feel at that visit. Do you feel heard? Do you feel like your questions are being answered, your concerns are being addressed, and how you feel with that relationship?
Can you actually schedule a visit before you give birth? Is that an option?
I don't believe you can, because they will always ask for date of birth and a name.
For the baby, right? Okay.
For the baby.
Okay. I just want to clarify that. Sometimes parents have kids that are expected to have developmental challenges, or they themselves may be experiencing some socioeconomic challenges. Are there resources out there to really help with that transition for those who we consider to be at risk?
Yes. And I'm going to speak for where I work. We do have certain resources that we allot to families that have extra needs or need additional resources. We also screen for ACEs, and so that also helps us identify different areas where we can help, which ACEs is Adverse Childhood Events, where we screen, for the family to see how we can best set up, the mother and the baby and the family unit. There are, I believe every community has regional centers, which are centers for babies with our children with disabilities and who will need additional resources like speech therapy, physical therapy. And those are usually city-based and county-based, and those are available as well.
And how early can you get enrolled in those programs for if you have kids with developmental challenges?
I believe pretty early on. So, for example, babies who are extreme preemies, they will actually leave the NICU with all of that information about how to get connected with the regional center in their community. And a lot of NICUs, when babies are extremely preemie and need additional resources, will actually attend a high-risk infant clinic that's usually scheduled by the NICU upon discharge.
Oh, okay, that's really good to know. Listen, I hope everybody's taking notes. If there are things that parents can do, especially those who are concerned about being prepared for emergencies, is there anything that new parents should consider doing or having or preparing in their home?
Do you mean emergencies as far as the baby, or?
Yeah. So if I wanted to kind of be reassured that I can handle an emergency, because y'all know kids.
Oh, got it. Yes.
Kids will do just about anything you don't want them to do.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to prepare for parenthood and I'm trying to prepare for all the possibilities, are there things I should have in my home for emergencies? Are there things that I should be able to do in the case of emergencies? Like what kind of skill sets or what kind of supplies or tools should I have in my home?
Got it. So I believe most hospitals where women can deliver have infant classes or newborn classes, and I do recommend taking and enrolling in those to kind of get familiar with the day-to-day and what, how to change a diaper, how to feed a baby, how to install a car seat, because those are things that you don't really think of. And if you show up to the hospital with your car seat for the first time and you don't know how to use this, it's going to be a very, very stressful day out of the hospital. So looking into that, and they also can teach you like infant CPR too. So how to, handle those types of emergencies. And I think that can also provide a lot of help if you're really anxious about things that can happen to the baby. And as far as in the home, definitely a car seat for the infant safety, a rear-facing car seat for infants. And then, like I mentioned before, being familiar with how to install it in the car and how to put the baby in the car seat. And how to make sure that the straps are working and that they're snugly fitting the baby and that the straps are working well. A safe spot for the baby to sleep, whether a crib or bassinet with a firm mattress, and making sure that you have somewhere to put the baby on their back in a crib alone with no extra like pillows or toys. So that greatly will reduce the incidence of SIDS. So I always counsel about that as well. Baby proofing the home, which I think your pediatrician can guide you around 4 to 6 months about how to baby proof the home so it's a safe place for the baby. Am I missing something?
No, that's good. Listen, you gave me more than I even thought of. I was like, oh, okay, I'm taking more notes. No, this was absolutely amazing. Okay, because these are conversations people feel intimidated to have because a lot of times they feel intimidated to ask us questions. And so sometimes I get the questions on my end, and y'all, once that baby's out the womb, I got no answers for y'all. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Listen, ask your pediatrician is my comments all the time. Ask your pediatrician. Skin rash. Oh, listen, I don't know about those rashes. Okay. Ask your pediatrician. Listen, you can put me on automated replay. Ask your pediatrician. So I can't tell you how thankful I am that you came on and you shared these. Like these are serious pearls and jewels for especially new parents who are trying to figure out how to organize parenthood, how to process things. What should I know? What should I not know? Parenthood is stressful, right? So it's really important to have these resources. So you have provided such amazing information, Dr. Calderon. If people had additional questions or wanted to perhaps become your patient, okay, how can they reach out to you?
By email.
Awesome. And you will receive that email down in the description of this video. And we thank you so much for joining us. I am Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club right here on YouTube and healthybump.club on Instagram. We thank you guys for watching. Listen, Dr. Calderon helped us out also on a couple of other topics. So you may want to check those out. We talk about developmental delays and really talk about the whole experience of a parent who have a child who have a developmental delay. Y'all, trust me. Check out that other topic. Check out that other video. And we will see you guys when? Next episode. And